So what can Mickey 17 possibly do if he doesn't have a translator device? It's weird because we made a whole bunch of Westerns here in America and movies like Dances with Wolves. Kevin Costner managed somehow to get us invested in the buffalo and in their spirit without ever having Dances with Wolves guy pull out a translator device and have the buffalo, "You see, we were on this land before you, and you will regret having killed us." Kevin Costner's like, "You've said a lot of wise words, buffalo. I'm going to have to think about those, compare them to other words I've heard." And then that doesn't happen at the end of Dances with Wolves because it is cinema. No translator device needed. We're back. Welcome back to another episode of the Crowded Theater Podcast. As always, I'm Kyle.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Cliff.
Yes, well, welcome back. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Doing good week.
Not bad. Good weather.
Yeah, well, this is the Crowded Theater Podcast, the podcast where, the only film podcast where every film is seen in theaters. We do not cheat. We do not watch them on DVD. We do not watch them on streaming. We do not watch them on YouTube. We see our films among the people, and usually that's seeing older things. We just came off of seeing Seven and Seven Samurai for our last couple episodes. But here this week, probably since the first time since Nosferatu came out, we're going to talk about something new, you guys. Yeah. Something that didn't come out before the turn of the millennium for once. So this is the new movie, the second week in a row, since we're imminently releasing our Snowpiercer podcast. This is the second Bong Joon Ho movie we will be doing in a row. His new film, Mickey 17, which played at the Alamo South Lamar. We had a rollicking good time watching one of this famous Korean director's, his first English language effort, Snowpiercer, last week. Great discussion of that. Went into the fact that Cliff and I have been watching South Korean movies really since Chan-wook Park and Bong Joon Ho jumped on the scene right when we were in film school back in the day in 2003, and gave that whole history. Won't have to do all of that this time. So we went in kind of excited to see Mickey 17, as we have enjoyed some Bong Joon Ho movies in the past. And Cliff, Taylor, Kyle, how did we feel about it?
I think overall, I think I just want to make this quick comment because you had said that Snowpiercer was his first English Valiant, and I think one of the extra features said that it's still in Snowpiercer there was 85% English, 15% Korean language spoken, and in this movie 0% Korean was spoken.
Well, there you go. That's true. There's zero. I guess those percentages are probably true. Yes, there is no Korean in this movie.
Somebody said that in the bonus features, and I'm going to just roll with it.
No, good. Well, I'd say another distinguishing feature between these two films is that Snowpiercer is a good movie.
Yes.
That takes you on a ride and engages you emotionally and pays it off in a coherent way. And Mickey 17 is not a very good movie.
All the way till the end, you really don't know what is supposed to be the story that you're reading.
Yeah, well, it's like, I don't know, I think I don't think there's anything particularly complex. It's just not compelling at all.
Well, I guess. I mean, I think more what she's referring to is because it's a Bong Joon Ho movie, because we just saw Snowpiercer, you're willing to give Bong Joon Ho the benefit of the doubt.
Well, that is true.
Almost to the end. It's like, I'm almost to the end. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay,
yeah.
Something brilliant's going to come together. It'll tie this thing together and make everything we've seen kind of make sense or be worth it or whatever, and it doesn't quite ever really come.
In fact, I would say quite the opposite, as opposed to Snowpiercer, where the third act is really the thing that kind of alchematizes, transmutes the entire first movie, even the first 90% of the movie, which, as much as it might have enjoyed the movie up to that point, it has an ending that's so brilliant that it elevates the rest of the movie. It makes the movie before it better, like any good ending should. And instead, the third act of Mickey 17, after a film that has already taken you on a kind of murky and ambiguous emotional journey, ends up completely sort of falling apart into this sort of weird thing with the space buffalo or something like that, which doesn't really seem to follow in any way as the third act of the movie we were watching up until that point. But anyway, let's dive in on Mickey 17 and try and keep it quick. So, Bong Joon Ho, the perennial salutatorian of South Korea, has always been around making movies. He recently was very successful, transcending any other South Korean or foreign filmmaker, becoming the first wholly foreign language movie to win Best Picture for Parasite. Parasite, a very good and a very smart movie that I enjoyed the cerebral exercise of watching, though I have felt no desire to return to watching at any point since then. Won Best Picture, and he got up on stage and made a big to-do about subtitles and a bunch of other things. And since then, he was able to make a big, fancy English language movie with a Spielberg cast. And by a Spielberg cast, I mean, right now, the Daniels, the guys who made Everything Everywhere All at Once, are getting their Spielberg cast for their last Unicorn movie, which I saw the trailer for, actually, and looks pretty good.
Please let that be good.
I would really like to see a good movie.
That looks like it could be so fun and good energy. I love the trailer.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that was why if we all sound a little disheartened, I think it's just because, generally we see older movies in theaters all the time and talk about them on the podcast because most new things that are released in theaters don't deliver one a movie experience. That is to say, they don't really even feel like movies anymore. And so when Bong Joon Ho making this movie,
which we were all very pumped to see.
Very pumped to see.
Very excited to see.
Very, very stoked about all of that. And then when it ended up just kind of landing, I think, kind of a thud for all of us, it was a bit of a letdown. But anyway, especially after really enjoying Snowpiercer last week. But anyway, so let's talk about Mickey 17. So Mickey 17, we're getting to the Spielberg cast thing. So a Spielberg cast is when someone wins Best Picture and their film makes a lot of money and gets a lot of critical acclaim. Their next movie, they get a Spielberg cast. And a Spielberg cast is when you get A-list people who could even open smaller movies as marketable draws, play every single tiny role in the whole movie. That's why right now with the last Unicorn, what is it called? Death of a Unicorn movie. You're seeing the moody daughter played by Jenny Ortega, the father played by Paul Rudd, and the rest of the cast all filled out. Eyebrows guy is super hot right now, and
which
he's
I will,
in that movie.
as again another just one-off. There's a great clip of him saying that just every couple of years he himself Googles eyebrows guy just to see if he's still the guy that pops up. And he goes, every actor has eyebrows.
No, he takes the cake as far as eyebrows are concerned. One day we'll learn his name, but until then,
I wish. Yeah, no.
But until then, it's just eyebrows. So Bong Joon Ho has that cast. He has Robert Pattinson in the lead, who's been doing a lot of weird and out there stuff the last few years.
His acting was pretty great. I
think Robert Pattinson. There's a lot to. Sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say there was not a single point where I didn't believe both of his characters. I really liked both of his characters. Yes. I felt like the interactions between them was really great cinematography. There was I never really. I think they touched a bunch of times. Which is, to my knowledge, a split screen thing that's hard.
Yeah. All the special effects things were cool. Yeah,
effortlessly pulled off all the special effects things. Didn't notice any of the seams there, and it was very distinguished. Both characters were very distinguished, such that you couldn't even look at a still of either of them standing still for a second without telling which guy he was.
100%.
17 or 18.
And we probably, just to break up this endless stream of negativity, there's much to praise about this movie, and one of the things is how good Robert Pattinson is. Like the concept that, and it's utterly wasted and unexplored in the rest of the movie, but the concept that in fact each Mickey is unique and each Mickey has their own personality, which would have been a great thing to address in the third act instead of the Space Buffalo, is sold instantly when you see Mickey 18 wake up next to Mickey 17. Like before they even start to fill it in with the narration saying, by the way, when I talked to What's-Her-Head, my girlfriend, she said that Mickey 12 was more like this and Mickey 13 was more like
clingy.
This. Boy, that would have been a great thing to make the third act about, huh? Anyway, but the concept announces itself entirely in Robert Pattinson's body language, exactly, behavior. Before he's even said a word, Robert Pattinson has stood up and he is conveying a completely different person. And throughout, you don't need to really hear him talk. You don't really need to hear him do anything in order to get that he is that Mickey 18 is this sort of rough, more aggressive, more assertive, more testosterone-driven version of him.
That's funny.
Whereas Mickey 17 is the more meek version.
Slightly
of him.
more wilty.
Yeah, which is, of course, great because it announces the whole concept of the movie in the title. It's not just about some random Mickey 17, but Mickey 17 being this utterly unique individual. And in the context, again, of this being a movie that we've done a few science fiction movies like this now. Moon did it, and I think that movie Oblivion did it, though I didn't see it, of an actor playing two guys who are clones in space. This has an entry point within it, which is the most interesting of any of those, which it's focusing on the fact that they are not, in fact, carbon copies of each other, like Sam Rockwell in, Moon or whatever. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. That they are, in fact, slightly unique. That this movie is about Mickey 17 as a unique individual, which speaks to the fact, in great moments like when Mickey 18 is like, let's go kick that guy's ass, who fucked them over.
Yeah.
And Mickey 17 is like, what? How would you know about that? And he's like, your memories are my memories. It speaks to something really fascinating and interesting about the movie, which would have been awesome to explore in the third act. Not necessarily more explicitly, but to be embraced in what was going on in the third act.
Because they make very different decisions,
yes,
and
they make
18 makes some interesting decisions.
It's a very provocative idea because it essentially states that you are more than your memories and your body. That you could have all the same memories and all the same things, but that maybe there is something else, some uncanny non-local consciousness, if you want to be fancy about it, or just say soul if you want to not be fancy about it, that looks through every individual person. And it actually is a much more interesting way of addressing the cloning thing. It's the same way they address it in Multiplicity, sort of, all those years ago with Michael Keaton, which is the
ultimate clone movie. The best clone movie. Never to be topped.
Never to be topped. Is that they print out more Michael Keatons, they print out more, Robert Pattinsons, but each one has a unique soul attached to him, despite having all of the same memories, blah, blah, blah. Fantastic issue to parse. But it bears, at best, a kind of perpendicular relationship to where the film goes from there. Now, that's good. It's great that they have that, because otherwise the stakes of the final moment of the movie, spoiler alert, where Mickey 18 sacrifices himself such that Mickey 17 can live on, etc., 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 only works if you have explored and created that idea. But it feels like a drop of something interesting and like a flavor in an ocean of just distilled tap water. It just feels utterly diffuse in this movie. And sorry, we were focusing on the cast a moment ago, and so just to wrap that thing up finally, we have a film that is definitely saved in part by a really tremendous cast who, the best elements of it, like Toni Collette, feel kind of wasted in a character that's barely there. And this felt, we were kind of talking about on the way out, of similar to the experience of watching Poor Things.
Yeah, very similar, actually.
Yeah, but go ahead, Cliff.
Well, just, a foreign director directing a big-budget English-language film, both with Mark Ruffalo in it.
Chewing scenery.
Lots of high expectations. Okay, this could be really great. This could be a masterpiece. It looks very weird in the trailers. You go, you see it, you do. There's a lot of interesting things going on cinematically, but it doesn't gel together, and Mark Ruffalo is a big problem of both movies. But
he plays basically the same character in both movies. One character is the cousin of the other.
Yes, I agree. I agree, that is to say, I suddenly had flashbacks of being trapped in the theater during Poor Things with Mark Ruffalo, like chewing scenery for minutes at a time and being kind of utterly lost in that whole thing. And I was like, oh, here we are again. And again, it's just, even by Korean standards of performance, it's a bit odd, and it falls pretty fucking flat throughout the whole movie. And again, at best, how things resolve themselves bears a kind of perpendicular relationship to everything that's interesting about the movie. Go ahead.
No. It's fun because I found myself thinking, like, he is so overacting in some scenes, but the parts of him that I wanted more were the parts that he wasn't overacting. Like, there's like an implication that the wife was kind of more the mastermind, or that he was a little insecure, so he kept like checking in with the wife. That was really fun. I kind of wish they had leaned into that a little bit more, but instead he leaned into the I need to be on camera and doing the president thing or the emperor thing.
It was a very, very big performance. It's a big swing. In general, I am a fan of big performances that are big swings, but let me replug the computer in here. In general, I'm a fan of big performances and big swings. However, I am not a big fan. There we go. Cool. Computer wasn't plugged in. So, in general, I'm a big fan of big swings and big performances and all of that, but I just, this, for whatever reason, it felt like a performance from a different movie. It felt like a performance that just did not quite fit in the reality of everything. And again, that's a another problem with a foreign director directing a movie in English that is not his native language is if you compare the movie that Mark Ruffalo was in to the movie that either one of the essentially anonymous girlfriends of Robert Pattinson's character were in, they were not in the same movie. You know, those two other girls were in a Marvel movie. Mark Ruffalo was still in Poor Things, and they didn't really ever gel together and make me believe in any kind of coherent reality. So to kind of tee up the whole movie in the conversation and give it its due, we should probably actually say what the movie is about. So Mickey 17, what is it? What is his name? Robert Pattinson plays Steve-O. Steve-O is this guy on Earth who sucks and needs to escape because he got fucked over in a macaron
shitty
shop.
Friend who helped him make a loan, and now they're chased by loan sharks.
Yeah, loan sharks are after him for his failed macaroon shop.
Yes,
exactly.
and so
they're going to cut him up with a double chainsaw.
Well, exactly, which doesn't even make sense.
Doesn't make sense at all. Seems less effective than a single chainsaw for your purposes.
Yes, by Earth gangsters. All of that stuff's fun. But so as a result, he goes into space, and having not read through the paperwork, clumsily
and
signs up.
not having any skills that would get him there.
Not having any skills, signs up to essentially die over and over and over again and be cloned again, doing very, very dangerous jobs as an expendable, which buys him passage on this thing.
And it feels like he's the only expendable on the ship.
That's part of the concept.
Is he?
That's part of the concept. Is they quite laboriously explain the entire history of the Expendables in a sequence that's actually really cool about a weird serial killer guy who clones himself multiple times so that he can have alibis and go on murdering hobos or something, which is a pretty cool sequence. But it essentially gets us to the point where they say that this cloning technology is completely outlawed, but only in the context of deep space, and only one per flight. They will have an expendable to do extra dangerous thing.
I missed the one per flight caveat, because I was under the impression they were going to taking all that they could, but he was the only one that signed up.
No, Robert Pattinson stands in as the singular stand-in for the lower classes on the ship. He is all of the lower classes all at once.
He's doing all the deaths all at once. Yes, exactly. Yes. And in that way, the movie has a very fun, not unlike Snowpiercer, very fun and obvious metaphor about people kind of sacrificing themselves and debasing themselves for money in an economy that treats them like cogs and blah, 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 blah. Cool, I'm digging all that. But once they start printing off Robert Pattinson's, and he starts dying over and over again, and he can keep coming back, we get into the same problem that exists in a lot of the Marvel universe and all the silly multiverse movies these days, including Everything Everywhere All at Once, where in order to make the film dramatic, one has to essentially devote all of one's calories within the movie to undoing its central premise, which I think this film could have done quite deftly, and it actually sets it up beautifully with the differences between Mickey 17 and 18. But what I mean is, if there's a million Captain Americas, you have to figure out a way to create dramatic stakes that are inherently diminished around the death of the singular one Captain America outside of a world where a time portal can open, and you can bring in 57,000 Deadpools and 58,000 Captain Americas, because the singular nature of life is kind of where stakes come from. They come from blood. That's where all the emotions come from. Familial blood, violence blood. So if someone can literally be obliterated into atoms and then brought back as a different version of himself, what is the movie about, and where are the emotions generated within the movie? So whether it's this, or it's Everything Everywhere All at Once, or it is Mickey 17, you spend the rest of the movie trying to undo and come up with some big thematic statement about the singular uniqueness of life, or whatever, to undo the central premise that you're kind of starting with. So fine, cool, great. But in this movie... so we're moving along. He's an expendable. The film has more problems than just the premise not really paying off in any interesting way in the third act. One of the thing goes off the rails as soon as we get into space, when very, very quickly we montage through 4 years of time, and what could have and would have been very interesting if we see it in a compressed way that was, emotionally potent is instead blitzed over in a way that distances us in that oh-so-Korean way from everything that's going on. So his first encounter with his relationship with his super tough firefighter girlfriend is supposed to be the emotional core of the whole movie, because that's where we end up at the end, and yet their first meeting and their entire relationship through is literally montaged through in slow motion.
We don't hear her speak till halfway through, and we're surprised. Yeah. Oh, she's British.
Yeah, didn't know she was British at all, which is crazy because, she does not talk for a majority of their relationship, and then at the end, she talks a whole bunch. So that's breezed through real quick, and so it automatically takes the story and makes it feel incredibly diffuse. All of the things, his experiences dying the first time, the second time, the third time, his meeting of her, because it's essentially summarized like a novel really quickly and really textually in this montage, we have nothing to invest in, nothing to grab onto. We don't even have the meet cute between him and the girl to invest us in their relationship. And so go ahead.
And you get like snippets of their memories that get more info at the end of the movie that frankly would have been better flashed on.
Yes. No, for sure, this is the other
weird pacing of info dumping.
No, again, this is the other delightfully Korean thing about the film, is the whole film has been folded into a weird paper crane, which other better Korean filmmakers like Chan-wook Park use beautifully in a film like Handmaiden, where he gives you an entire emotional reality to invest in. Excuse me. An entire emotional reality to invest in on one level of two girls falling in love, and it is very human and very evocative, so that when he peels back the next layer in the movie, that there's an even deeper level of betrayal or an even deeper level of love. He has invested you in that even more with even more emotional potency and even more emotional potency. The reveals in this film, whatever emotional potency or love could have been established between them, which is in the scene where she holds him while he's dying, etc., we, for some reason, get snipped out.
Yeah.
And then, we have a lawnmower. Cliff is going to rise and address this lawnmower. We instead get snipped out and then added back into the end of the movie. And I'm all fine with doing things non-linearly. In the words of Shonobu Hashimoto, the Japanese screenwriter, it is not a flashback if it advances the story. So if you can mix things up in a way that invests me more in the story, please do that thing. Instead, after the incredibly diffuse opening of the movie, where a whole bunch of events that could have been utilized to invest me in Mickey 17 are breezed through, and again, somewhat undermining the central premise of the movie in the sense that the uniqueness of the different Mickeys, the whole idea is not experienced until... Go ahead.
No, I'm remembering the sequence of the scenes that it got revealed in, and it literally is... It feels like the director was like, by the way, this is how you're supposed to feel, because the sequence of events was they're in prison for plot reasons. She is a badass and breaks out of the cell and kills the whatever guy or fights the guy, and that's when Mickey 17 is like, she's the only one that's ever cared enough to feel like this. Insert clip of him dying with her. And it's like, we know that. She's the one that's been fighting for you this whole time. She's in jail with both of you guys.
It would be great if we were invested in this relationship at the beginning of the movie. Then we could ride this whole emotion the whole time. That would be pretty cool. No, and here's the thing is, I get it from a cerebral conceptual standpoint. Like, the montage devalues the lives of the individual Mickeys as they die. So they're experienced as fragmentary memories, which somewhat, from the POV of Mickey 17, they're just memories. He actually wasn't the Mickey with the 2-hour life, and he wasn't the confident Mickey that actually picked up on the girl in the thing. So how do we portray that? We don't know, so we'll just do it in slow motion. He's only experiencing it as a memory. It actually, and this is the thing, everything in Parasite is very purposeful. Everything in Snowpiercer is very purposeful. Everything in this movie is very purposeful. It is very smart. It is very conceptually cool and cerebral. The problem is, if you have a film that is already going to make very diffuse and ambiguous our emotional investment in the protagonist, and then you don't work actively to push it in the opposite direction, not to satisfy I don't know what, but to actually invest the audience in something, in the relationship, something human. Mickey and him hating a guy who fucked him over before, and him having sex with a girl. And again, it was nice to actually see sex on screen. You don't really see that in American movies anymore. But is not enough. It's not enough. And you're already working against the idea that he could be cloned and brought back at any moment. So again, it's not enough. It is weird and alienating and again, is cooler in terms of its concept and what it is doing cerebrally than what it is doing emotionally. And I think just to point out, I just want to point out that as opposed to, by contrast to, the perennial valedictorian of South Korean cinema, Chan-wook Park, always taking first prize. He made Handmaiden the same year as Parasite, and it is a film that will scoop you up, lift you up, and wring you out emotionally in the way that all of the best films from Hollywood have for 100 years. Parasite is a film that I enjoy, but it is a cerebral exercise that doesn't leave you. You do not leave the film finally understanding what it was all about, or feeling on some deeper level like you do with Handmaiden that you've been changed by it. But instead, you experience a chin-scratching sense of curiosity as to, I wonder what that guy in the basement meant. I wonder what that was all about. And again, leaving this film, I feel the same way that I have with a lot of the cerebral efforts of Bong Joon Ho in the past. I leave this film thinking, I bet the buffalo had some sort of meaning for him that had a perpendicular relationship to the cloning thing. Let me think about what that means for a minute. But I felt nothing. I felt bored. I felt like I was waiting. By the way, watching people get frustrated in the theater. It was hard. We were in a crowded theater seeing it. Could see a lot of people. I don't condone this kind of behavior, but I did see a guy checking the time on his Apple Watch. And unlike other times when I've felt utterly pulled into a movie and I've been so annoyed by a light coming on, I found myself curious also as to what time it was. And then finally, and I think this utterly summarizes the emotional experience of the movie, because again, theaters tell the truth. I don't give a shit what you wrote on your fucking blog about this movie. Theaters tell the truth. When the film finally wrapped up, and in a good movie, you always want a little bit extra at the end. So the Space Buffalo issue has been resolved, and his girlfriend is a politician now or something, and he's alive. And then there's one more dream sequence in the movie with Toni Collette, who is utterly wasted in this whole movie. And there's one more dream sequence when it cuts to him awake, back in his cell again, or back in his room, as if the film's going to just continue on one beat longer. To my immediate front and right, I could see the face of a guy watching the movie, and he just fell forward and planted his face firmly into his hand, and I felt immediately what he was feeling. I felt that, I get it, man. I also was hoping that was going to be the end, but here we are, and it's going to continue to keep going. And again, that sounds overtly negative, but what I mean is we all felt like we had had enough, and we didn't need any more, and everyone was kind of checked out. And again, we've talked in this movie about this podcast. We've talked about movies like Gremlins, and then in Gremlins talking about E.T., or films that were accused in their own time of using animals for like cute emotional manipulation. But this in certain ways feels very Korean in that it feels like a film made by a robot, in that it sort of knows it doesn't understand human emotions fully the whole time, and so it asks, what do people like? Cute imperiled animals. And so somehow that narrative,
it's like large lice mite looking thing,
the big flea buffalo or whatever they are, which all communicate with each other and whatever, but doesn't actually arrive at any point that informs anything in an interesting way about the singularness of Robert Pattinson's life. I mean, I can get it on a conceptual level. All the buffalo are going after one tiny life, and Mickey 17's life is also just so as opposed to the kind of materialist earthling perspective where every individual life is expendable, can just be burned away. Their entire civilization will sacrifice itself and attack for this one particular life because every life is unique. I get it, but I would have liked it if that had been made using something that felt endemic to the clone genre of movie, something that had to do with clones and identity and Robert Pattinson and all of that. That would have been nice. Something that felt germane, something that felt like it was a part of where we were going. And the Space Buffalo thing, if you can want to make the argument that it does do that, I can prove to you it doesn't. And I can prove to you it doesn't by drawing directly from Snowpiercer, which is the moment the fucking translator device comes out, the whole thing falls apart. Because whatever meaning could have been imbued into a poetic version of, and in the last shot of the movie, Robert Pattinson turns towards the rising sun and he watches the lead mother, Flea Buffalo, crest a hill, followed by her children, and understands anything that's symbolic about the innocent nature of an animal. That is to say, Gizmo doesn't really talk. E.T. doesn't talk. They are spirits that transcend words. They are nymphs, they are angels, they are like children. That's why we like animals, because they don't possess a mind, but instead just possess a heart and a soul. And then out comes the translator device, because boy, howdy do Korean movies like fucking technology. So just like, instead of having the Korean guy just speak English or everyone understands each other, they pull out a fucking translator device in Snowpiercer, and it's silly. It's not silly because of technology. I'm not like that. Fine, you have a translator device, whatever, but who cares? Why waste 1 second on screen attempting to justify that Chris Evans can understand Korean guy from the host, and Korean guy from the host can understand Chris Evans? Why waste 1 second on it? I believe it in advance. I believe that they all speak each other's languages because they're all on a train. And why? So two points to make here. A, the exact same absurd Korean obsession with literalism exists in this film regarding technology, where they actually waste moments and calories on Mark Ruffalo, and again, he's a mechanist, I get it, but is asking questions about why they can't see good video feed, but the translators work, but will the button transmitter work across the same distance for the detonator if the video feed's bad?
It's on its own frequency wave, so it'll still be good. Don't worry.
Exactly. And again, if you're thinking about that when writing or watching a movie, think about something else. But the real pain in all of this translator business is that the moment you give a voice to the mother buffalo thing, it just is another person with a brain. All of the meaning could have been
even
conveyed.
though she speaks in one word.
Yes, she speaks in one word commands, but apparently she's issuing demands, she's negotiating, she's talking, so she's not really a spirit or something purely cinematic and something ineffable. She is instead just talking to him, so they negotiate a thing. What is beyond obvious to everyone, including the Mark Ruffalo character intrinsically, which is they've all arrayed outside to get the one little one that's inside, has to be explained via a translator to Robert Pattinson, literalizing it to a degree that it really doesn't have any more emotional content to it. Okay, other leader of an army, now that I have heard your terms, we will go and we will get the thingy. So they go and they get the thingy, and they deliver it because they were told to do so with words by the buffalo thing, not because some image or they witnessed some beautiful or transcendent thing happen among the buffalo that made him realize their divinity, and that he must now, for reasons that transcend reason, sacrifice himself with a hail of bullets cutting him down to carry the baby across the battlefield and deliver it unto the mother.
And then get a falsie of like, oh, maybe the baby's dead. Like,
yeah,
just
or whatever, to have her
second.
come back. No, instead they just put it in a sack and they give it there. And then instead there's a moment where Mickey 18 blows himself up heroically, I guess.
There's a quick comment of like, you're afraid too. Of course I'm afraid. Boom.
Yeah.
Like,
No, of course, yeah. And that's the thing. And of course, prior to that, they have to do the thing where they, of course, take away the magic amulet that's going to allow them to keep coming back. So they take away the magic amulet in the previous scene. Again, fine, but there feels like there's so much potential energy in what works about the movie. The great cast, a very interesting premise with with all the same kind of metaphorical potential that Snowpiercer and shit has, that if they had merely explored that idea, the idea that Mickey 18 and Mickey 17 are different, what does that mean? What's the deal with that? Let's see more scenes with, and then maybe a Mickey 19 shows up at some point by accident. Let's stick in a world where it's hyper illegal for them to be clones. They're on a ship, so they can't really get away.
Yeah.
They're swapping each other out. There is maybe a little bit of a French farce with people sleeping with each other. Ultimately, one of the Mickeys is going to be destroyed, and another Mickey has to heroically step forward and announce himself, and even though they'll be mutually destroyed, but, he says, I am not an animal. I am a real man. We saw the trailer for Elephant Man, because they're doing a retrospective of David Lynch.
They do even kind of play with this idea even just a smidge, and then they put it away forever with the explorer engineer girl that dies, that has a girlfriend that is like very hung up on her.
Who gets demographically coded as queer so that they can check that box.
She has a girlfriend, she's into Mickey, and then don't worry, at the end she's back with the shaved head girl. Cool, not a big deal. But there's a whole really nice conversation between her and Mickey where she is talking to him, who dies often, about her girlfriend who she locked eyes with before she got crushed by rocks and dies. And so they have this conversation of like, what's it like? Because again, everyone asks him kind of as a joke, like, what's it like to die? And he doesn't answer it. But you kind of think he might answer it for her, who's asking in a very genuine way. He still doesn't answer it, so we still don't really get any kind of answer for that. But then they kind of just not kiss, and then you throw the whole question away.
Yeah, well, a bigger question, just take a step back, is what is the point of the other gal?
Yeah.
Is she like Spanish or something? I don't know. What's her purpose in this movie at all?
That's actually a really great point.
Like, again, her storyline has nothing up front that invests us in it emotionally, other than you get a slight meet cute where it is implied she is attracted to Mickey, and that makes the other girl jealous.
Yeah, that's
then she's invited into a dinner scene where she participates in watching Mickey die one time, but he doesn't, I guess. Then she's in another scene where she is in a very long argument with other girlfriend about the Mickeys, and then she leaves the movie forever after that. And again, that doesn't ultimately serve anything about the clone story. It does if, in fact, Mickey, who was oh so jealous about first girlfriend, ends up realizing he's not the one that fell in love with her. A different soul fell in love with her. He's not actually in love with her. Only his memories are in love with her.
That would
and
be
so he
cool.
uniquely finds his own softer girl, whereas, as it turns out, the Mickey 18, the more testosterone-driven soul, the different soul, the different zodiacal sign, if we will, of a character, because that's what it kind of is, essentially, is the right guy. And again, this is what is implied, is the right guy for her.
They even say, let's share him. You have 18, I'll have 17.
Exactly.
Cool.
And that's the thing.
A lot of potential there.
There's a lot of potential there. You can imagine, if you think about the spaceship and the clones and the evil Mark Ruffalo character who wants everything to be exterminated and turned into calories, and two women who are in love with two copies of a guy, and they're going to kill one of them, but each one is unique, and each one is in love with a different girl who's in love with him. Boy, howdy, can you imagine a fantastic and dramatic third act that doesn't involve Flea Buffalo at all, and doesn't have to take those same moments and turn them into really clunky and diffuse, obvious action beats where he turns and I'll be the one who blows myself up. And like, none of the potential is actualized dramatically. There is a perpendicular, cerebral, thematic idea that might be accessed through all of the fucking buffalo at the end. It makes it feel bigger. I mean, in essence, it did allow them to launder a significantly larger amount of money through their production budget and into the pockets of visual effects artists, which seems to be the raison d'etre of every movie these days. So, I mean, how can you make a movie unless 50,000 VFX artists are paid, for 96,000 hours? Because, what's the point of making a movie? You couldn't make Barbie on real sets. You gotta replace everything in the background with computers. Anyway, yeah. So who knows why they're there? You know what's not there?
Why he's there?
What does not serve the film very well at all, which is ironic because it was playing in the Bong Joon Ho Theater at the South Lamar, is that the Alamo Drafthouse, lovingly but doing the film no favors, cut together a montage of other better clone movies to go before it. So you're watching clips from The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Multiplicity and other bullshit prior, so your mind is being teed up for all of the fun ways in which a clone movie can be milked for dramatic potential. I don't really remember how The Sixth Day ended with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it probably involves one of the clones heroically sacrificing himself so Clone Prime can be with his wife who loves him. I'm going to guess that's how it ends.
I think they go separate ways and live separate lives.
Yes. And or perhaps, because Schwarzenegger can't die. That's true.
Indeed.
But again, and this film, if anything, has a third act that feels somewhat adjacent to a clunky action movie, but
If the buffaloes were cute, it would have made a difference.
This is another really good point.
And
they were
in order for the
looking.
buffaloes to work. Now, I get it. They need to. The whole idea thematically is that when you first see them, they look like disgusting, horrible aliens. But then, by their actions, they reveal themselves to be actually sweet and harmless and have a good heart. Cool and stuff, but they never really advance their look beyond being horribly scary looking. So even when the baby critter is imperiled, you can't really feel that bad for it because it looks like a weird, disgusting bug with nothing that emotes
it has
in a way that we
squeals.
can catch on with.
It eventually, the thing they give them at the end that helps is you finally give them eyes you can lock into at the very end. Because again, Hollywood has this weird obsession for only the last 25 years or so since CGI with eyeless, orchid-faced critters that don't have eyes. So whether it's Cloverfield, or the monsters from the Star Trek movies, or it's the monsters from Edge of Tomorrow, or it's the monsters from fucking anything. Stranger Things, great example. Every monster has a face that's a flower that opens up with a bunch of tentacles and goes and
You scared Parker.
scared the cat, and doesn't have eyes, doesn't have anything to lock into. So orchid-faced critters, they don't work as scary critters either. The Velociraptor in Jurassic Park, even the shark in Jaws has eyes. One of the scariest things we can feel as humans is not just some ambiguous bug face that's very alien, but seeing the eyes of a predator, a consciousness that is locked back onto you and wants to kill you. So it doesn't even work as scary. It's weird and off-putting, but it's not even scary as eyes, because all emotions are in the eyes, because that is where the soul and consciousness reside. So how you gonna make something cute if you don't give it eyes? You don't. We don't invest in it emotionally, and just like the montage, just like the 4 years, just like everything else, it's pulling us emotionally out of the film and distancing us from everything. So just as a note, at the end, and this probably because it was done with CGI, was figured out in post-production, it's like, oh man, no one's going to care about this little maggot thing unless we see eyes. So finally, in the last scenes, you actually see it sitting up and actually staring back at you with eyes and all of that other bullshit.
I think, and I don't know if this is, I don't know how relevant this is, but when you see the mama beast's eyes, her eyes are like in her head. You have like an eyelid. It's like eyelashes. Like, it looks almost like an elephant's eye.
Oh yeah, very much like an elephant.
Every other time you see any of the other maggots' eyes, their eyes are on tentacles coming out of their mouth, and it is very off-putting. It is just, even when they finally do give them eyes, it's like tentacle teeth, and then 2 tentacles have eyes. And I don't know why the mom is different in that way.
Well, I think they it's all folded up in the weird, but they was clearly evoking an elephant as well in those close-ups of the eye and all that. No, I'm with you. It feels like a film that is struggling to use sort of, again, it feels like it is what people accused something like Gremlins of being with Gizmo back in the day. It is what people accused something like E.T. of being back in the day. Because E.T. uses an incredible narrative to invest you in this boy and this creature and this alien. And then on top of everything else, the actual alien has big eyes and is super cute. Now, that's not emotional manipulation. That's dunking the fucking basketball, okay? That's spiking it in the end zone. That's what that is. Gremlins, magical myth of a movie that invests you in everything. And Gizmo is really fucking cute. That is making a film where everything is pointed in the same direction, that is attempting to actually be a potent transmutation of emotions for the audience, where they actually see innocence and childlike divinity in this alien whose heart glows, and in this little creature who, from which all of this bad shit eventually springs. We want to empathize with things with big eyes. And yet, in this film that I think realizes, if only because Bong Joon Ho is a good enough filmmaker to understand this on an intuitive level, that it's not working. It's not working. It's not working. There's nothing in the film that's going to get people on board. It's not working. And so, what those films, like Gremlins and E.T. were accused of, using cute shit for emotional manipulation, is what this film actually does. It literally just takes something that makes squeaky sounds, imperils it, so that all of these people that we don't care about because we barely know them, have something to care about, have something for us to actually, to make us sit up in our seat and actually care how things resolve. Because again, imagine if instead of needing to imperil the critter at the end, we gave enough of a shit about the relationship between firefighter girlfriend and Mickey 17, or Mickey 18, that could be in any way milked in the final scene. What if, imagine that we didn't have to put the critter on the end of a hook, because just the idea of losing either Mickey 18 or Mickey 17 feels unthinkable, because each guy has had such a unique and on-screen chemistry and romance with each of the respective ladies that we can't imagine a happy resolution to the movie where they don't both survive, because our heart would break for the human girl who loves him. Imagine that ending to the movie, where calories are not spent and screen time and real estate is not wasted on montages or on these fucking buffalo fleas, and instead there's one really good scene that makes you think that Mickey 18 and Firefighter Girl are in love with each other in a way that transcends time, and they in fact should be together, and that's how the movie should end. But we also know that one of them needs to die. And there's also a scene whereby Mickey 17 truly falls in love. He doesn't just die flopping around like a fish in front of her, but actually falls in love with, and she falls in love with him, other girl, to the extent that we see that they are the couple who has a love that transcends space and time, and yet we know that one of them has to die. And then we're heading and we're barreling into a third act where we know inevitably one of them has to die, and yet it is emotionally unthinkable that we could lose either the rough and tumble, he's got rough edges, but he gets the job done, Mickey 18, or the lovable, and maybe he's not quite as capable, but he's got a real heart, and he's smart, and he has all sorts of other attributes that we give a shit about, Mickey 17. We actually care about them, and that has a real primal relationship to the love that they feel for each of these women, and we know they're thrown into conflict, and that's what the movie's about, because guess what? None of it is about Space Flea Buffalo. But that is not the movie we get. Instead, there's a weird conversation in a hallway between two girls about who gets to share them, and then one of them just sort of vanishes from the movie, and then comes back being,
back to being gay.
For Academy ratios, comes back to be coded as gay at the end of the film. So, go ahead.
No, I'm also just remembering, occasionally, because it felt like there was a whole tapestry of plot lines that just got dropped throughout the movie. And I'm also just remembering little quick lines, like when Firefighter Girl is yelling at the president, and she's like, and by the way, something, this is a waste of calories. And moving on to my actual point, because he makes a whole big deal about how calories are a thing. And I'm like, why did we need that quick line? Like, what did that line add
Nothing.
to?
No,
Stuff,
I
stuff
100%.
like that,
no,
you
I
know?
100% know what you mean. It's like everything about like the characters have nothing to fight for, so they're essentially trying to logic their way to the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And so again, the characters have nothing to invest in, nothing to fight for. So what can Mickey 17 possibly do if he doesn't have a translator device to have yet another textual conversation now with the buffalo? Mm-hmm. It's weird because we made a whole bunch of Westerns here in America and movies like Dances with Wolves, and Kevin Costner, the great Kevin Costner, managed somehow to get us invested in the buffalo and in their spirit without ever having Dances with Wolves guy or Indian guy from Maverick pull out a translator device and have the buffalo, "You see, we were on this land before you, and we are many buffalo, and therefore, if you were to kill us, perhaps at some far-off future date, you will regret having killed us, the spirit of the land." And then Kevin Costner's like, "You've said a lot of wise words, Buffalo. I'm going to have to think about those, compare them to other words I've heard, and then if your argument is logically sound, I will consider agreeing with it, Buffalo." That doesn't happen at the end of Dances with Wolves. We see the poetry of the buffalo visually because it is cinema. No translator device needed. And I think that's why this film feels so similar to Poor Things. What a fucking letdown it is, because these are supposed to be the guys, these couple foreign filmmakers that have been plucked out of Greece or South Korea, America, who doesn't like its own filmmakers and only likes foreign filmmakers, are supposed to be heralded as the carriers of the banner, as the vanguard for the
auteur cinema.
Auteur cinema, that's right. That they're supposed to be the ones, right? And Yorgos Lanthimos has made good movies. I like them. They are cerebral. I love Dogtooth. It's fucked up and harsh, and it's cool, and it makes it's an interesting film that you think about. I like Memories of Murder. I don't remember much about The Host other than how fucking gaga critics were for it when it came out. I watched it. I haven't felt compelled to rewatch it, though I'm going to revisit it again. And Snowpiercer kicks ass. But what is revealed by both Poor Things and what is revealed by Mickey 17 is that the people that Hollywood has imported to carry the banner and be the vanguard of auteur cinema don't even have the basic level of understanding the emotional mechanisms of a film, an emotional Swiss watch. They don't understand the emotional mechanisms of a film even as well as a mid-level Hollywood screenwriter in the mid-1990s. In the mid-1990s, when the money in Hollywood didn't come from the top, from tech companies that have bought the studios and are now funneling money downward into them, when it came from selling tickets to people in movie theaters, and it actually was a populist endeavor that came from the ground up. We were trying to tap into the money that was in people's pockets buying tickets. When that was the case, you had to understand the emotional mechanisms of a movie, and just like the great Chris Columbus did, working with John Hughes and everything, if you do with Home Alone or with Gremlins when he was working with Steven Spielberg, you can print money in the good way, not the bad way that they're doing it these days. You can literally print money. Remember, Home Alone was #1 at the box office for 11 weeks in a time when there was way more competition at the movie theater than there is today. Look at the murderer's row of movies that were coming out in the early 90s. And so that we've lost something. There is a knowledge that has been lost. It has been lost in the fever to throw away everything that was old and then import lots of things that are new to reconstitute some new Hollywood where the guy doesn't have to kiss the girl at the end of the movie. Boo. So they removed that from Twisters, where the people don't have to have sex because that's not politically cool at the moment. And instead re-engineer some new architecture of value like was done with fine art and the non-objectivism in art in the kind of middle 20th century, for a kind of intelligentsia to try and cut the head off of an art form, reconstitute it in their own image, and then sort of vomit it back out at the people and say, this is what you're supposed to like now. And what we have now is at best cerebral deconstructions of ideas, like the weird, like Frankenhooker, but, you know, classy, that was Poor Things, but it doesn't work as well as Frankenhooker. And you have this, Mickey 17, something that just falls utterly flat in a way that could have just been cleaned up by a mid-level 90s screenwriter to deliver the very same ideas that Bong Joon Ho wants to get across, but actually make them, you know, make them native to the form of cinema, to the emotional language of cinema, the emotional transmutation of feeling like Mickey does at the beginning, that he doesn't matter and he is utterly just a cog in a machine that could be killed a million times and it wouldn't matter. And then take the audience on the journey of actually valuing him by the end of the movie and valuing Mickey 18 to the point where we feel the emotional transmutation of every life is singular. And he doesn't know how to do that. And I would like to point out, Kevin Costner knows how to do that. So the next time that any critic is wanking off to Parasite or to Mickey 17 or to Poor Things, remember, they don't know how to do what Kevin Costner can do. And if Kevin Costner can do it, how great are their movies? Anyway.
Not even a relevant point. I'm just remembering, like, of all of the plot threads that they decided to drop, thank goodness we know the finality of whatever happened to his shitty friend. His shitty friend experienced no consequences other than getting beat up a little bit. But, like, he just lives a life, even though pretty much the entire thing happens because of his shitty friend.
Yes. No, speaking of emotional manipulation and just sort of whatever, that guy I think is the guy from like The Walking Dead or something.
I think
like
so,
that.
yeah.
I don't know. Just whatever.
He's got a good face.
Yeah, I guess he is a star or something, so they had to run him through the movie. Again, his character also goes nowhere. Again, imagine a character like him who's a real bastard who we hate, but who then, because the film isn't about space flea buffalo who talk through translation devices to explain that they're space buffalo, we have the screen time to actually allow that character to go through an emotional transmutation. And again, let's talk about this. Why are the Japanese so good at this? Why is it that they're so close to Korea? Korea, I love Korea. They make very smart movies, but Godzilla -1, still retains every bit of the tradition of of Japan watching classical Hollywood films in the era of Kurosawa and Masaki Kobayashi and Shinobu Hashimoto and all these guys. They watched American cinema and they're like, we're Japanese. We can do this better. We're really good at shit. So they made a better version of it, and they've just still been doing that for years. Go watch Godzilla -1. Every single character has an emotional arc that it forces you to invest in through the death of children and loss and betrayal and cowardice and all of these things in the beginning of the movie. And every character out of a large cast of 7 characters brilliantly changes, and it pulls you along through their stories in the way that, 90s films did. And then it pays them all off by having characters you hated turn out to be heroic, and characters who felt good turn out to be bad, but they all come together in a way that feels emotionally transformational for both the characters on screen and the audience. And instead, Stephen Yeun, is there in some scenes. There's one scene early in the film where he's there. Then, in another scene, he's also there. Then there's a mid-scene where he is present. Then, in 2 more scenes, he returns to there-ness. In other scenes where he isn't there, he isn't present. And if in any of those scenes that he was there in, he hadn't been, then he wouldn't be in that scene. But it wouldn't affect the rest of the movie at all.
No.
So,
and frankly, one rewrite could have gotten rid of his character completely.
Indeed.
You know, like truly, like
Well, just it's about
there's things to do with that character in the movie. You know, he is the bad friend who betrays Mickey and all that stuff, and you can lean into the direction of making him really, really bad and get a satisfying comeuppance, or go through an emotional journey and then us be happy with where he turns out, happy with all the other characters. It doesn't even really split the difference. It just does random non-value things with him. And he's around by the end.
Yeah, it pays off. It doesn't matter if you invest in him or not. It goes nowhere. It changes into nothing. It makes no point by the end of the movie. So it's just anyway. So here we are in the last. I don't want to spend more than an hour on this turkey. So we have about 8 minutes left. So there's really only one question left to answer, Cliff, which is, who is the most jacked person in Mickey 17?
Well, clearly, obviously, without any doubt, we the answer is Mickey 18.
Mickey, oh yes, just because of his attitude.
Just because of his attitude. It's
That's
about
true.
jackness. It's about attitude more than it is about
good.
physical muscles there.
Yes,
he could get shit done.
Yes, no, Mickey 18 has big dick energy for sure, so he takes the prize. I do feel like we can't give it to Robert Pattinson because he refused to get jacked for Batman. I feel like
funny.
he's
True.
immediately disqualified. So if it weren't Robert Pattinson and we had to give it to someone else in the movie, yeah.
I
Slim
can't
Pickens.
recall enough people in the movie.
Firefighter girl had some pretty jacked jaws. She
Oh,
kept
sure.
that
Yeah,
one rock.
probably Firefighter Girl would be the next, or Soldier Girl, or whatever we
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
call her.
Whatever
She was a
weird,
soldier,
whatever weird masculine archetype she was ill fit to suit, but we were kept
Yeah.
being insisted over and over again that she was. Yes, that
Yes,
thing.
yes,
I guess
yes,
it
yes.
works for Mickey 18's character, but my God, films are fucking silly.
Well, her
and upside
character
down.
worked when it was like, okay, her and Mickey 18 are both druggies who are having wild sex and
Yeah.
being druggies. Like, okay, I actually get this character now and can see them having a thing. And Mickey 17 can now go off to a different relationship with someone that he likes more, that's better suited for him. But we are left. Anyway, nothing really works about that character, unfortunately.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Well. Yeah.
Don't worry, Bong
By
Joon
the way,
Ho. I will still see your next movie.
Oh yeah, see Snowpiercer again, folks.
Yes.
It's been a while. If you haven't seen it in a while,
Yes,
check it
yes,
out
yes.
again.
Definitely see Snowpiercer, and yeah, with the last several minutes of the thing, since I don't really want to talk anymore about Mickey 17, yeah, in the past, Cliff, you and I have, I wish we could. There's so many movies that we've seen in theaters that we haven't talked about. We saw the last print ever, apparently, of Demon Knight because the rest of them burned. We saw The Trip on 35mm, which was pretty rad. We don't talk about these on the podcast because they were too late for Taylor to attend, so they're not
have a
podcast
bedtime.
movies. But we saw that. We've seen so many rad things in the theater, you know, and that took me... The Trip, which was made in about 6 days and is mostly incoherent, is a much more emotionally coherent movie that, like, always gets me at the end, a little bit emotionally at the end of that movie. You know, when Peter Fonda gets out of the bed and he goes whatever and he looks at the sun and he sleeps with the girl. That movie, which is mostly an incoherent montage of a movie, does more to invest me in it when I see it than Mickey 17. No, we can't end on a negative note, Taylor. I have to say something positive about something else. So apparently all the prints of Bride of Chucky have been burned, as we found out. That's negative. We can't end on negative. But
I
we
feel like
we learned that while we were seeing Demon Knight in 35mm, and apparently it was the last print, and that was a really good screening. What else did we see? Cliff, we saw Sleepwalkers on 35mm.
We did. That was quite
really
an
rad.
eye-opening experience, not having seen that since it aired on HBO in the mid-90s.
A little deviation from the theaters, but we did just see The Cowboy Way last
Yes! That is a slight variation on the usual format, guys. I'm sorry, but I will point this out. The Cowboy Way, starring Woody Harrelson and Kiefer Sutherland, is not available anywhere on streaming or on iTunes or any of that bullshit, so we had to order a Blu-ray of physical media, which is, I'm sure, somewhere behind you guys right now, of The Cowboy Way, and we watched it last night or the night before, I guess. And, man, what a great movie that is. So don't see Mickey 17. Order a Blu-ray of The Cowboy Way, starring Kiefer Sutherland and Woody Harrelson instead, would be my recommendation this week.
Unfortunately.
Woody Harrelson should get the Full Metal Jacked award this week because he got he was super fit and even though it wasn't the movie we saw, I think he earned it.
Just shoehorn that in.
There you go. Anywhoozle. All right, guys. Well,
On that note,
let's maybe, we'll see probably a good movie. It'll probably have been made 35 years ago or something like that next week, and then we'll be back. So on that note, until next week, I'm Kyle.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Cliff.
And we'll see you in a crowded theater.
Woo!